Prof. Commissioner Malema.
Thank you very much, Advocate. Our advocate here wrote a very nice letter about you. Did you see it?
I did, yes.
And he says in one of the sentences there, when I joined the bar, David was already a leading member at a group 621 with a strong commission and human practice. He took a keen interest in facilitating the entry of black members to the group. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So what happened when you accepted a brief of all-white team to represent Cyril Ramaphosa during the commission?
Well, I don't think that it is invariably the case that one can use one's position to ensure that there are black members of one's team. I think all I can say is that I have taken steps to ensure in many cases that there are black members of the team and women members of the team.
Now I'm talking specifically about that because you knew it was going to be publicized, and if you're committed to transforming the legal fraternity and judiciary, as it were, you would have taken a keen interest to perhaps advise that our team, particularly representing a sitting deputy president, must reflect the demographics in our country. Have you expressed that opinion and got rejected, or you were comfortable with an all-white team?
I think the issue in that case was really one in which it was simply to answer your question directly, I don't recall specifically raising the question as to whether there should be a black member of the team. And I can't actually recall the particular circumstances as to why that didn't arise. As I've said, it isn't something that one does in every case, but one must do it often in order to ensure that one opens up the opportunities that I've described.
I don't know other cases. I'm talking about something I know. Were you comfortable representing such a high-profile person with an all-white team?
The answer is yes, I was comfortable.
You didn't see anything wrong with that?
No, because it's not the case that in every single instance the team must always have a black member. As long as one is taking steps to ensure that those opportunities are given, then that is sufficient in my estimation.
There are certain cases that just requires all-white team.
I don't think it's a question of requiring an all-white team. I think it's a question of whether it is invariably the case that every case must have a black member in the team, and I don't think that that is so.
Can you speak any African language?
No.
Are you a white supremacist?
No.
Why are you not speaking any of the indigenous languages?
It's something that is undoubtedly an omission, and it's something that I should have spent time doing, but I haven't.
So do you think, or have you taken any lessons about indigenous languages?
No, I haven't.
Will you advocate for our white advocates and legal practitioners to take any lessons of indigenous languages?
I think, in fact, in our group, we have had teachers of Zulu who have made themselves available, and it's a very good thing, and people undoubtedly should become conversant in African languages. I simply haven't done so.
So those whites who look down on indigenous languages, they are suffering from white supremacy.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Those whites who look down on indigenous languages, yeah. When those who see them as something that is not of interest, something that is low and does not deserve to be learned by them, are they white supremacists?
Well, I think it would be a wrong attitude to take to suggest that that those languages are not important and that as South Africans we should learn them. I'm not certain that it makes one...
That's not what I'm asking. I'm saying those whites who think that our languages are inferior and do not deserve to be learned by them because they are so superior, will I be correct to call them white supremacists?
I think if somebody had a disposition to believe that an African language was inferior, they might very well have white supremacist inclinations.
So if you advocate for learning of such languages, even when you don't take an initiative to learn it, don't you think that is hypocrisy?
No, I don't think it's hypocrisy. Unfortunately, it's something where I have done numbers of things in my career, and it is something that I should have found time for and didn't. But you know, we are all human, and there are omissions that are a feature of our lives.
Do lawyers, are the lawyers allowed to advise their clients? Advise their clients? Will lawyers advise their clients? Are they
Yes.
allowed?
If the question is, I mean, clearly lawyers, the central role that they play is to advise their clients.
Did you advise the Deputy President to apologize about his remarks in Marikana?
I don't believe that my advice was ever sought on that score.
But you are a team that represented him, and 5 years later he says, I'm sorry about what happened in Marikana. Don't you think that it puts you on a different light? You should have then said to him, it's a good thing to apologize because 5 years down the line he has done the same. You don't think it was necessary for you to do that?
I don't recall whether my advice, I'm almost certain my advice was not sought on that matter. And I have no recollection that it was. And the question of an apology is ultimately not a legal question. It's a question for Mr. Ramaphosa to square up to.
If you were asked by Mr. Ramaphosa at the time whether he should apologize or not, you think it was a good thing to do?
Commissioner Malema, I think focus on testing his suitability for judicial appointment.
I'm doing exactly that.
No, it's not a strictly legal issue. To apologize or not to apologize, I don't think it's a role. It's more of a political thing than a legal thing, quite apart from the fact that you've exhausted the number of questions that you should be asking.
I think the last comment is a fair comment, but to ask me to ask legal question is unfair on my part because I don't know anything legal. I don't ask legal questions. I just ask general questions to test the suitability of any candidate.
Yeah,
I wouldn't ask legal questions. I don't know anything legal.
Yeah,
I'm not a lawyer.
The commission was not about apologies. It was about testing who is responsible for what. Lawyer or no lawyer, Commissioner Malema. That's what it was about. And I'm saying, quite apart from the fact that you've asked more questions than you're entitled to.
No, I accept that. I don't accept being censored, Chief Justice. That I don't accept.
No, I'm not. It's my responsibility to make sure that as Mr. Unterholter is sitting there, he doesn't get any impression that I allow questions that do not go to testing whether he is suitable to be appointed as a judge. I don't think the question you are putting to him speaks to suitability for judicial appointment.
No, I'm done, Chief Justice.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Nkosi Thomas.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief Justice, and good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
15 years ago, I joined Group 621 because I admired people like you and I wanted skills development or skills transfer of sorts to occur. I was there for 5 full years, and I found myself having to leave the group because I had not realized that which I sought to achieve by joining the group. In other words, there was no tangible transformation plan. The question is, have things changed ever since I left the group? And let me throw something else in there. We watch you often on TV, acting in high-profile cases. I'm yet to see you lead a black practitioner. So please enlighten this commission about what you mean when you say you're committed to transformation.
Well, let me deal with the second part of your question first. I'm not certain that you are correct, I'm afraid, in respect of leading black juniors, because I've done a little bit of an audit of the cases, particularly high-profile cases, and black juniors figure very frequently in the teams that I lead. So it may not be depicted on television, but it wouldn't be factually correct that black juniors and women juniors don't figure prominently in the teams that I've led. As to your experience in Group 621, I think you're right that if we go back 15 years, the kinds of initiatives that were then being taken to both secure the admission of black people and women into the group and what was sought to be done once they came into the group was inadequate. I don't say that the group has yet got to a position where we have got it absolutely right, but I do think the one thing that you can now clearly see about the group is that there are significant numbers of black people and women who have stayed in the group for long periods of time and have thriving practices. They have thriving practices by their own deserts, but that in part does reflect changes that have occurred since the experiences that you had 15 years ago.
I'm relieved to hear that things have changed for the better. Thank you. Thanks, Chief Justice.
Thank you, Commissioner Nkosi Thomas. Commissioner Kane.
Thank you, Chief Justice. Good afternoon, Mr. Unterhalter.
Good afternoon.
As you know, I have a disclosure to make, which is that we practice in Group 621 at the Johannesburg Bar. Limiting myself to 2 questions only is difficult, but let me give it a go. Mr. Malema's criticism of you, of course, has a particular sting, because there's validity in the fact that we have to respect the dignity of black people, and there has to be a demonstrable commitment to doing that. Are there other ways in which you've demonstrated such a commitment?
Well, I would say the commitments that I've made are the ones that I've already in part described, which is that I've made it my business to ensure that in group admissions we have a strong policy in favor of the admission of black people and women. The second thing is that I have taken steps to ensure, not just in the juniors that I work with, but in fee splitting arrangements and the like, I have sought to encourage the use of black juniors and women juniors. And thirdly, I've done a lot of work in in training of advocates. And over the years, that has become more and more an important part of how we seek to give skills to entrance to the bar and provide skills to black practitioners and women who now figure more and more importantly in our training programs.
Thank you. Then my second question would be to request you to describe to the Commission when you took a leadership role in the group and what your current position is.
Yes. Given the variety of both academic commitments that I've had and commitments overseas to the WTO, I wasn't really much able to discharge a leadership role within the group until I returned from my WTO stint. So from probably from 2014, I've been part of the leadership committee of Group 621. And as part of that committee, I have sought to take various group-wide initiatives where we have tried to take steps which will enhance transformation both within the group and beyond it within the bar.
Thank you, Mr. Unterhalter. Thank you, Chief Justice.
Thank you, Commissioner.